Let us now explore the formulas and functions in Excel. So, as we have seen here, formulas are mathematical expressions used to calculate values in cells. And cell references are used to identify cells in formulas. For example, you can see that the formula in this cell is sum of the values in the cells ranging from F8 to F10. If you look over here, you would understand that the cell references are made up of column letters and row numbers. In our formula, F8 is the starting cell, which is the intersection of column F and row number 8. So when you create a formula, you can use cell references to identify the cells that you want to include in the calculation. There are three types of cell references: relative, absolute, and mixed. To understand these, let us go to sheet 4, where I have copied some data to understand these concepts better. Let us start with relative cell references. So consider this data, which is a data on pizza orders in different branches. Let us first start with performing a little formatting on this data so that it looks more presentable. For this, what I will do is, I will select the header and make it center aligned by going to the alignment option under the home tab and then clicking on this, which will center align it. Then I will select all of it and add border to it. For that, I'll go to borders and then choose the type of border that I would want to apply. Right now, I will choose all borders, which would apply borders to all the cells. Now, as you can see here, the header is not completely visible. So whenever you see that the entry in a cell is not completely visible, you can expand the cell by grabbing the end of that particular column by pressing the left key on the mouse and extending it as needed. Or you can just double click on the right end of that particular column and it automatically expands or collapses according to the entries in that column. Similarly, let me do for column I as well. So now we are able to see all the data. Now let us look at what relative cell reference is. So in a relative cell reference, the formula changes when it is copied from one cell to another. For example, here we have the quantity sold for each type of pizza at a particular branch. Along with that, we also have the price per quantity. Now suppose I want to find the total price. For that, I will create a new column with the header total price and hit enter. Let me just expand it a bit so that it is completely visible. Now to calculate the total price, we need to first apply a simple multiplication. So I will multiply the value in column L, that is the quantity, with the value in column M, which is the price per quantity. Now I'll hit enter. So if I click on this cell and look at the formula bar, it shows L8 times M8. So this is the calculation for row number 8. Now there are different ways of copying a formula from one cell to another. One way is to do a Ctrl+C, that is copy, and Ctrl+V paste. You can see that the cell references have changed. Here the cell references were L8 and M8, but when the same formula is copied to another cell, it gets changed according to the cell's row and column. So here in this case it is L9 and M9. Another way to copy a formula across cells is to left click and hold when the plus sign appears when hovering over the bottom right corner of the cell and pull them down to as many cells as needed. And another way is to go to the last cell, do a Ctrl+Shift up arrow so that it lands on the last filled cell, and then do a Ctrl+D, which would copy the data of formula in that cell to all the highlighted cells below. Now you can see that as I go through each cell, the cell references have changed based on the row and column of that particular cell. So that is relative cell reference. Let us now move on to absolute cell references. So in an absolute cell reference, the cell references do not change when the formula is copied to another cell. For example, I want to make the references in this cell that is L8 and M8 to absolute references. To do that, what you have to do is add a dollar sign before the row or column or both as per your requirement to lock that thing. So for example, in this case, if I want to lock only the row, I will add a dollar sign before that is 8. And if it is the column that I would want to lock, I'll add a dollar sign before the column, that is L. And as I said, if I want to lock both rows and columns, I'll add dollar sign before the row as well as the column reference. So to do that, click on the cell reference and press F4. This will lock the complete cell reference. I'll do the same for this as well. So now we have locked the complete formula. Now if I copy this formula to the cells below, for that press Ctrl+Shift down arrow, which will select all the cells in that column with data. Now I will do a Ctrl+D to copy the content that is present in the first cell of the selection. Now when I click on each cell, and if you look at the formula bar, you can see that the cell references have not changed when we copied the formula across these rows. This is because we have locked the references here, and this is what is called the absolute cell reference. Finally, we have the mixed cell references. Mixed cell references are a combination of relative and absolute cell references. To demonstrate it, let me first revert the last changes. So you can see that the formula has been reinstated to how it was earlier. Here you can see that column M has prices for different types of pizzas. Now consider a scenario where the price is static and is the same for any type of pizzas. Suppose that the price is 8, so I will leave 8 here in the cell M8 and delete the rest. Now to calculate the total price for each type of pizza sold, I have to simply multiply the total quantity sold per pizza type with 8. That means in our formula, the cell reference for quantity changes, but the cell reference for price remains static. Here we can see that the first calculation holds good, but as we move down the rows, we can see that the cell reference for price changes as per the row, and this gives the total price as 0, which is wrong. Now to fix that, what we can do is, we can go to cell N8 and lock the cell M8 as we want that to be constant across all rows. So I will press F4. Now if I press F4 again, it will lock only the row, that is 8. If I press it again, it will lock only the column. And finally, when I press it once more, it unlocks both the row and column references. So I will click on it once again to lock the cell reference. I'll hit enter. Now I will copy it to the cells below just like I did last time. Ctrl+Shift down arrow to highlight all the filled cells below it. And then Ctrl+D to copy the formula. Now if you look at the formula bar, it shows L8 multiplied by M8. Below that is L9 multiplied by M8, L10 by M8 and so on. So this way one of the components in the formula is fixed. Only the first value in this formula changes because that is still a relative reference. The second value doesn't change since that is a fixed reference now. And a combination of absolute and relative cell reference is called a mixed cell reference. So to conclude, cell references can be used to create formulas that calculate values, perform logical operations, and reference data in other worksheets or workbooks, which we'll look into in a while. These can be simple like we saw here or complex.